board, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to finally present to you a year's worth of work on behalf of the firm I work for, Greenplay, and the staff of the district. We work closely together to create the 10-year comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan. What you're seeing tonight will be just a synopsis of the plan itself, but I would remind the board that this is still a draft document, and we're looking for any opportunity if you have some suggestions or recommendations to make changes. We fully expect that that's part of our process tonight. So your team was made up of our Greenplay staff, which was Art Thatcher, a principal with the firm, and myself. We also worked with RRC, which is an associates, which is a firm that specializes across the country in survey research and land design, that did some really good work for us in terms of your trails and other costing and such. So the master plan, in short, is the document that you'll be able to use over time as the main planning document, not just to suggest or look forward to which recreation programs or which activities or which amenities you need to put or would like to put in parks, but it really has a lot of implications. For instance, with the land dedication, the Quimby Act, with the park impact fee study that we'll be starting for you shortly. So we had different stages of the project, and I'd like to really spend most of my time tonight on moving forward and what we found and what the recommendations are, more so than the process. But just to let you know, so that you're aware, we went through the process of gathering information. We went through the process of developing findings that were specific to each and every comment, each and every suggestion that your community members made. We put those together into kind of buckets of ideas. And out of those came the draft recommendations, and then a study of what were the recreation efficiencies and what are the how effective is the maintenance team or maintenance operations, and what are the financing opportunities that are available. So the study itself was and is always predicated on the population in terms of where you were and where you are now. You can see that you have a modest level of growth in the city, actually declining in 2010. It should be nothing new to you. But moving forward into 2025 and beyond, the growth rates are still fairly minimal. We went into the public engagement, which is really the bedrock, the basis for virtually everything that we did in the planning process. We had 1,037 people that either participated in person or over Zoom, told us what their desires and priorities were, and or completed the survey. And you can see how those numbers came out. Primarily of that 1,037, 882 of those were actually survey responses. The survey response was very good. The random invitation at 372 gives us confidence within a 5% margin of error. So we feel good about that. During the process, as we started out, we went and worked through with the staff to create a proposed set of mission, vision, and then new hallmarks for the district. And these are proposed, and it's something either with adopting the master plan or as a separate action to adopt for the district. What I would point out or call your attention to are the four boxes at the top, and they are safety, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've made reference in the plan adding social justice to this as well. Creative and playful and professional organization. Each of these are hallmarks that define a number of other aspirational things that the staff worked through. We spent the better part of a day going back and forth and reprioritizing until we knew for sure that this is really what we think or what the team thought the district really calls out. During the whole process, we had some reoccurring themes, and I'll go through these fairly quickly. Active and healthy lifestyles, a need for replacement of the sports center, as we all would have suspected in the beginning, additional aquatic activities, and indeed health and wellness activities that go with those. Sustainable and resilient funding, that was very important to your community. Update the land dedication development fees, which you're doing. Looking at additional partnerships and really reaffirming and re-energizing some of the partnerships that you have already, such as with the city in terms of the master lease, and such as relationships and working out better, more defined written agreements with the school district. What we heard was that folks wanted a connected and walkable city, particularly how parks connect to other parks, how people connect to those parks, and how the parks, people connect to people within that. Walkable access to parks and facilities was an important thing. And so we spent some time looking into where we are and how to make that even better. Extraordinary programs, meaning teen and youth, senior programs, sports programs, cultural programs. These all kind of came and bubbled to the top. Folks were very interested in safe, clean, and green park spaces, meaning that the park spaces that you've got, to make sure that there's the highest of priority in terms of safety for your community, making sure that the maintenance levels are as high as possible. We heard about the need for or the desire for additional dog park or parks. We heard quite a bit about inappropriate behavior, homelessness, and these kind of things. One of the overriding themes was take care of what you have already versus just go out and build a whole bunch of new parks. Access for all residents, again, focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, the top priority among the staff when we spoke with them, and making sure that there's access in terms of affordable programs. Looking at the opportunities, addressing irrigation, addressing issues with turf issues, a little deferred maintenance, and quite a bit we heard about restrooms. So those were the reoccurring themes. So we asked in the survey, then what are the future priorities? And just to make reference to really the top 2 or 3 here or 4, improvements, renovating existing facilities. Again, the theme, taking care of what we have. Additional trails, things that connect the different parks to different areas throughout the city. More teen and youth programs, and then of course the sports complex. There's quite a bit of data in terms of future priorities and visioning in the master plan in terms of survey responses and written text. But for the purposes of tonight, those are really the things I would call out. Factors to increase participation: when we ask folks, what can we do better so that you can go and have a better experience in your parks? Improve safety and security. And I'd call your attention to the invite sample. Again, the random invitation sample gave us an opportunity to hear from not only people that stepped forward that said, I want to participate and tell you what my thoughts were, but these were people that received the survey in the mail and may not have even been park users or such. But for those that were, they answered 76% that improved safety and security. And when it comes to this kind of survey research, that's a big number. Better condition, maintenance of parks facilities, lighting, improved communication about offerings. You can see those are all above 50% for the invitation sample, which are big numbers.
What does the open link mean, Jeff?
The open link was the survey that we put out for anyone in the community and encouraged everyone to participate and take the survey. So there isn't the same statistical level of reliability, because it could have been all sports users, or it could have been all cricket players or seniors or pickleball players. And those are groups that we typically see flock to the survey in order to have their voices heard. However, in this case, for your district, there wasn't a significant difference between the random and the open link survey. In many cases, they were fairly similar. And in this case, you can see the numbers on open link were a little lower on the top 4 here. We came to the district, and we have a couple of folks that travel around the country for us evaluating parks. And one of the gentlemen, a guy named Dave Peterson, that you may have seen at a previous presentation or public meeting. He's really a pioneer of what we call our grasp system. And it's really a much better, more effective way of looking at and determining the effectiveness and the efficiency within your parks. So just to give you a very quick synopsis, what we did when we came to your parks was to take a look under the hood, and instead of just looking at traditional, what we call capacity evaluation, the number of green areas, the number of acres per 1,000 residents, we looked at really components and comfort features, recognizing that even if a park has a number of components, if the restrooms are too far away from the soccer field, it just doesn't work. Or if a component is kind of old or tired and it needs to be replaced, or a playground isn't effective anymore, maybe the population in the neighborhood is now younger than the playground that is built. There's a number of different things. So we looked at both of those from the perspective of what needs do they meet in the neighborhood, and what needs do they meet, how well do they support the community. We scored the parks 1 to 3, with a 3 being highest. The neighborhood scores, again, we looked at things like how accessible were your parks for pedestrian or walkability access? How attractive do they feel? Are there nuisance features? Sports lighting is a great thing for sports groups, but sometimes those bright lights can affect others who are attempting to use the park space in more of a passive opportunity. Are the components unique to the system? In some cases, in the case of, say, City Park, you have quite a few horseshoe pits that are all congregated in one area. So the score when we evaluated the park went right, was very high. However, it may be better for the overall system if they were spread out a little bit more. So let's see if I don't miss the next page. Okay. From all of that, we were able to map the location and quality of each of the components in each of the parks. We put those into a GIS mapping system, so that you've got literally down to the longitude, latitude of each one of these things, each one of the components and such. And we scored them to take a look in each area. And we're able then to do some prioritization or some ranking and comparison. So we looked at the park facilities and rank, and you can see here, this is the list. Need to move us out of the way real quick so I can see it. You can see that from the standpoint of each park, there's some high scores and there's some lower scores. And some of those lower scores may be because there just weren't any components, within the park. You can see how, of course, as you would expect, Dan Foley is up high, and as is the City Park. But Dan Foley is really the one, your main trophy kind of park, and in fact, it ranks highly among other parks around the country. Let's see. Okay. The other thing that this process allowed us to do is to sort things for low scoring components. So now the staff will have the opportunity, as they develop capital improvement plans, to look at each of the locations and even go down to what those components are that scored low. So we could say that at one particular park, there's a basketball court, but it only scored a 1. And as a result, maybe that's something that needs to be a little more of a priority. But there's a lot more to the story than that. In other words, we looked at perspectives here as well, at the diversity level in each of the neighborhoods, the walkability, the ability for people to have access. We looked at the household income to see, are there pockets of opportunity there, areas that really, if you're given the option of fixing some of these components, what is your priority? What do you really want to, what do you want to gain in a sense? Can you fix a playground that will help your overall access, but at the same time, perhaps there's a greater need in a particular perspective. So we looked at neighborhood access, and we have maps within the, within the plan that show really where is the kind of the deep touch. How far out do people have to walk? Where are people living in comparison to the components and the better recreation and park assets? Again, we looked at walkable access to outdoor recreation. And, one of the things we learned was when we looked at it without concern with where community members in the district lived, that number was fairly low. However, when we factor out those somewhat industrial areas where there aren't people that live there, you end up with about a 65% of the population that has some access to walk to outdoor recreation areas. That's a good thing, but it's also has an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to take some of those yellow areas you see on the map and perhaps make put in or develop additional components or opportunities, perhaps where folks can get to them. One of the things that we keep in mind when we talk about walkable access is you'll see on the left the darker lines around the map. Those represent potential kind of cutoff areas or barriers per se, and we have a very kind of scientific way we look at it, and that is if your 8-year-old child or your 80-year-old parent couldn't cross that street, or you wouldn't feel comfortable with them doing that on their own, then there's a bit of a barrier. And it could be a barrier that comes about because there aren't appropriate sidewalks, or really needs to have something over the street or what have you. But in any event, you can see that you've got some decent walkable access to outdoor recreation. So the recommendations, we looked at focuses and time frame. Basically, we looked at maintaining, we looked at sustaining, and we looked at improving. In other words, we took all of the information that we learned and attributed it to where we had learned it from or who we learned it from, whether it's community members, whether it was the survey, whether it was the evaluation of the parks. There's subjective, or not subjective, but qualitative and quantitative ways that we looked at this. And so from there, we held a visioning opportunity with the leadership in the district, and we started to unpack all of those things that we learned. And as a result, ended up with a laundry list of action items, goals, and objectives that matched up to the themes that we helped to develop. So the action items came into short term, things you can do for the next 3 years, midterm 4 to 6, and long term 7 to 10 years. Those there's also some ongoing goals or objectives, and some really are ongoing action items. You'll see those in the master plan. There are a lot of different action items that go to each one of the goals. So I'll summarize the goals here briefly. Organizational effectiveness, being resilient, and having sustainable funding over time. That's really the first kind of administrative goal. And that has to do with, as the district grows, as you get additional population, but also to kind of catch up with where you're at now. Looking at perhaps staffing levels increased, a minimum of 6, perhaps up to 8 full-time positions. And in the plan, those are defined, that primarily having to do with park maintenance, that really is kind of the higher priority at times. Increase in improved communication. We realize that the way that the district communicates, the survey respondents told us that isn't how they like to receive information. Explore additional funding options, and we've got a laundry list of different opportunities in there that all can be explored and perhaps developed. Improve relationship, as I said, with key partners and look at a resource allocation philosophy. But I might mention that that's a good thing to formalize. But prior to the pandemic, the district and its representative of really good management and follow through on the part of all of the staff and the team had over a 70% cost recovery number, almost 80%, which is really, really, really high in comparison to many other communities that I see. Now, of course, when COVID hit, just like every other district and municipality around the country, cost recovery dropped. There's a section on financial analysis in the master plan that goes into much greater detail on that. The second goal, aspire to be a connected and walkable city, and that's expanding greenways, pathways, and trails. We've included kind of a regional approach to trails in the master plan, because I think that's a better way to look at trails, is that the whether it's a walking path or a loop in a neighborhood park or community park, at the end of the day, trails are always better if they're connected to each other, giving folks an opportunity to go from one side of a region to another. So that was a goal. Objective was, again, based on the development, recommended development of a trails master plan. Continue to improve and enhance recreation programs and service delivery. We looked at this in great depth in terms of subsidies, in terms of participation, but not only participation of different unique people who signed up for activities, which was around a little over 20,000 if memory serves me. But we looked at those in terms of what the impact on staff is. So we call those contact units or contact hours, so that if a youth signs up for basketball and he plays twice a week for 5 weeks, he's going to end up playing then 10 times. And so that becomes 10 participation units in a sense. And when we add all those up, it's a whopping 380 some thousand participation units. And what that tells you is that your recreation staff, they're earning their keep. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of very, very behind the scenes things that happen, especially in the sports, whether it be youth or adult. And that's where a considerable amount of the participation units are. The big number comes in terms of camps and activities. Promote active lifestyles. There's a number of action items that help in that area. Look at exploring additional community events. One way to really improve a lot of different opportunities in the parks are to hold outdoor events, because when you activate a park space, a lot of the inappropriate behavior as you do that will tend to kind of go somewhere else. And so a good way to do that are concerts and movies, and quite a few of the individuals that may take up residence in or around the parks will attend those, which is a great thing. But then typically the amount of vandalism and the amount of homelessness can have decreases as a result, depending on how active you or how much activation you do. Work with other service providers to meet demand, meaning that there's a number of partnership opportunities there, and develop a more formal recreation program evaluation process, something that says every quarter I need X number of new programs, or every quarter I need to have at least 85% or 90% on my evaluations from the programs or activities. And when the program number reaches 90, then you change the bar to 92%, always wanting to continually improve. You'll see quite a few action items in this area as well. The last one, or not quite the last one, but goal 4, prioritize on diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. So looking at how can you continue to meet the needs of everyone in your community, how can you engage with them? And there are some goals and objectives. And I think it speaks well for the fact that your staff, your team, made this really their highest of priorities when we worked through the mission statement work. Improved quality park experience, and a lot of this is the meat of the plan. Whether it's improving daily upkeep, continue to expand facilities, amenities, take care of what you've got. The list is there, but again, each one of these has a number of action items. We broke out those action items again based on those GRASS perspectives that we spoke to you earlier about, and have some opportunities where you can really prioritize. Things. Investing in existing and new facilities. Again, the one that may bubble or that bubble to the top, perhaps dealing with the sports center. Quite a bit of concern, perhaps for additional community center space. But what we have here is not only new opportunities, but where are those areas that you can really prioritize to invest in? And again, the action items will speak fairly strong about it. And in fact, here's one from that particular goal. Each of the action items has their action. We've developed what we think is a capital budget estimate. Now, the capital budget estimates that are on here are kind of order of magnitude, because things in the park business, as far as building and doing things, purchasing wood and supplies, as a result of the economic changes with the pandemic, it's really difficult. I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't expect, we hope that pricing for a lot of stuff isn't going to continue to be as high as it is. And so we've tried to be as reasonable as we can with these cost estimates. There are also budget impacts, recognizing that virtually everything you do has at one point or another either a staff time requirement or funds to pay for whatever that action item is. In this case, it's a couple of things. We're creating a disc golf course, creating a concept plan for inclusion of a splash pad. You can see where those are midterm objectives. Now, if you feel at some point here that some of these timeframe to completes need to change, then those are certainly very appropriate. Very appropriate comments to make. A couple of other things that I would just mention to you briefly is that your standard of the number of parks or acreage of park space as was adopted originally at 4.25, but you're over that standard. You've got more park space than that original standard was, which is a really good thing. We expect that with the modest population gain, there still will be not necessarily a need, unless you'd like to maintain the 7+ acres of park space per 1,000 people. You could just absorb where you're at, but the maintenance cost should be certainly considered. If you do develop additional park space to maintain that 7 acres, you're somewhere at least to maintain the standard, you're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 to 14 acres of park space over the next 10 years. So my point is, it's not a significant thing, but it's important to maintain the whole concept of, when you approve a new park, look at the maintenance, the operations and maintenance cost at the same time. Let's see if there's anything else that I had to comment. I think that's pretty well it. I tried to go through what is a 150-page document as quickly as I could, though, so that you'd have some time to ask questions and have a discussion. So I'll stop sharing, and if you'd like, we can talk a little bit on what you might what you might be thinking about the plan and where we go from here.